Hey, all. Welcome back to a Monday, November 11th, 2024 edition here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. It's Monday, so you know what that means. A pod divided, balls and dogs here on this program with fellow University of North Georgia alumni Matt Green, where we recap week 11 of the college football season, do deep dives into Tennessee's victory over Mississippi State, Georgia's loss at Ole Miss, and then thinking about that game Saturday in Athens between the two schools, and then get into South Carolina, why they are for real down the stretch here in the SEC, Bama, and the roller coaster that is the Jalen Milroe experience as QB1 in Tuscaloosa, and a whole lot more coming up in just 1 second. Appreciate you guys watching us here on YouTube. We're well over 2,000 subs now and growing a little bit more each and every day. So if this is your first time coming to this channel and you've not already done so, please make sure you hit that subscribe button here below if you like what you hear today. Make sure you like this video to support it. Comment below what you think of today's episode and all that good stuff as well. But full episode, shorts, clips, all that good stuff here on this very channel. So appreciate you guys checking us out here on this daily National Tennessee Vols sports podcast. All right, Uncle Darren, let's go.
The Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast from still the aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me down there in Tequila, Georgia, my good friend and fellow University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green, is here. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. It is, not the best of days when you're coming off a loss. It's tough, but here we are. We gotta get through this together.
Well, I don't have to get through anything. I picked the Ole Miss Rebels to beat the Georgia Bulldogs.
Oh,
this
okay.
weekend,
We're not friends. Okay. No, that's
what?
Cool. That's cool.
What?
Cool. No.
What?
No,
I'm just saying.
messing with you, man.
I mean, hold on and let the record show, folks. We'll play. I need to go back and play the tapes. When Tennessee is coming off a bad loss, Matt Green has shown no mercy in terms of the fraudulent Tennessee Volunteers, this, that, and the other over the years. We've been doing this show for 4 years now, Matt Green. I don't seem to
fairness,
recall.
they were fraudulent in some of those years.
Okay. I think we can go back to, you just haven't been on the receiving side, as you talked about on your new show, Voice of College Football for Georgia here, Matt Green, talking about like Georgia has not been on the receiving end of these kind of losses. So you don't really know what to do. This is new territory, Matt Green.
Oh, trust me, sir. We know exactly what to do. We're Georgia fans. We know exactly how to melt down and blame everyone and everybody from the offensive coordinator to the quarterback smiling for 2 seconds on the sideline. I mean, the camera was on him for a solid 10 seconds, and he looked miserable most of the time. Jaden Rashada probably sitting there trying to keep his QB loose. Maybe said something. Who knows? Who knows what he said? He cracked a smile. Internet ran with it. He just cares about Instagram and Lamborghinis and TikTok and whatnot. And he's not a. I don't know what to say. I'm not here for the Carson Beck bashing, to be honest. I'm not gonna say he played well, but do you blame Quinn Ewers for the loss to Georgia? Because I don't personally. I think Georgia abused Texas's offensive line, and the quarterback had nothing to do, and he was getting dominated the whole night. I think that's exactly what you saw in the Georgia Ole Miss game. Like even the interception, it's off a deflected pass at that line of scrimmage. Like I think obviously the offense was not good. I mean, the one touchdown drive is a 20-yard drive, and honestly, like I was a little surprised Kirby decided to go for it on that 4th and goal from the 2. It's like if you don't go for that, you don't score a touchdown the whole game. So it was kind of crazy. And like you were saying, I don't remember a game that Georgia's been blown out. Obviously there's plenty that come to mind as a Georgia fan through the years, but in terms of a Kirby Smart coach team, there weren't even many games in year one where Georgia was just uncompetitive like that. Like honestly, the biggest loss of the Kirby Smart era was to Ole Miss in Vaught Hemingway Stadium. So Kirby's now, I believe, 0-2. I don't think they played. I think those are the only 2 times, and then 2023. So I believe he's 1-2, I guess, in his career against Ole Miss, if I'm remembering that correctly. But I think of a game. I don't know if you remember 2018 at LSU. That's the first year Joe Burrow was starting. It was a game. It was like 19-9 going into the fourth quarter. I remember like Swift had like a big drop that like could have been a screen pass that could have gone 50 yards or something. But it was just like, and it was the game too that the Justin Fields stuff was at peak. Like, what are we doing? We're not doing anything offensively. Why is Justin Fields not playing? Yada yada. And it was like, but it was still close, kind of going into the fourth quarter. Like this game was 22-10 when Georgia's on that like 9-minute drive that took up like half the third quarter and then the start of the fourth quarter. And it was still a game, but just Georgia just didn't capitalize on any of their opportunities. Like the best drives of the game, you had the Nate Frazier fumble, and from what people were saying, like in practice, fans were wondering where this guy was for 3 or 4 weeks, and the reports from practice were this guy fumbles and that's why he's not playing. And you've seen the way he can move, and he's a good runner. Like I feel like he has that ability, but if you're going to fumble the ball, that's the quickest way to lose playing time. That was a big one because that was the second.
That's a little overblown. I mean, Dylan Sampson's fumbled 3 straight games, and he had 30 carries on Saturday night. He was out
if you have 30 carries and you're fumbling one time, that's one thing. But if you're fumbling, I don't know how much he's fumbling in practice. So I
don't know. I just feel like if he's your best running back, and I think Nate Frazier is your best back right now and most explosive, then it's just like you got to ride with him.
Etienne's the best player on the team. I don't know.
Is he more juice than Frazier though? I don't know. Frazier.
I don't know if he was still dinged up because he only got 6 carries in that game. He wasn't even on the injury report, so I don't know about that. But Etienne just. If you would have told me Etienne was the best player on this team, on this offense coming into the season, I would have thought, and Arian Smith was going to be one of the go-to, or was going to have the stats he would have, I'd be like, this offense is going to be incredible. But Etienne's kind of the only guy, playmaker that's really doing anything. So like I was saying, kind of going back, like I don't put this loss on Carson Beck. You can talk about the offensive game plan if you want. They put a stat on the screen that Georgia has 27 drops this year, most in college football. It's like that's pretty much it, right? That right there to go with the offensive line just getting dominated. It's hard to just blame the offensive coordinator and the quarterback. I mean, I should say it's very easy to blame the offensive coordinator and the quarterback, but I think it's more than that. It's like no one wants to hear that, oh, Ole Miss just tip your cap, they just played well, but it's like honestly, like Ole Miss dominated Georgia. There wasn't even like if this play it goes a little differently. Yeah, I mean,
I feel vindicated. I've been a Kiffin truther here, Matt Green, as you know, on this program, where I'm like, I just think I've said he's the best coach in program history, and when you play in enough of these big games, like he's gonna get some. Like I think Kiffin was just too good not to get him, and I think him and Charlie Weiss Jr. flex their play calling muscles in this game. And really being able to still move the ball down the field with Simmons, their backup quarterback, right down the field in that spot, not to waver, I think is a testament to what Ole Miss has built. And I don't know. I think Ole Miss is legit. Ole Miss can absolutely win the national championship. I'm not saying they will, but they're just kind of like a souped up version of Florida State last year with the portal, but they have a solid foundation. I think Dart's upside still higher than Travis. I think being able to do that with multiple key injuries in that game, you lose your top back for the season in Parrish. You don't have Trey Harris, and it didn't really matter in the rain and everything else. So we'll get more into Ole Miss and Georgia here momentarily, Matt Green. But before we get into that,
I feel like we were into it. We don't.
I know we were. You were fired up, ready to go. You did a pod today already on Georgia, Ole Miss. You're ready to go, sir. You got the green polo on to match the name, Matt Green. So folks know Matt Green in the green polo, talking all things dogs. So make sure you're subscribed and checking out Matt on his new Georgia focused program, Georgia, the voice of college football. Matt. Week 2 of the college football playoff rankings coming out this week. I want to do this before we dive into how we did here in week 11, sir. What are your predictions on where the Vols and Dogs land here in the prediction model coming out of this weekend's games?
I think I meant to copy and paste this into our doc, sir, but I did not. So you want me to start from the top? Because I personally, what's the phrase, like misery loves company, that sort of thing. I got a lot of satisfaction out of the Miami Hurricanes getting upset this weekend. I was just more not from like a Georgia fan, like hater or anything, more from like Indiana and BYU's perspective. I just feel like there was no justification for Miami getting more hype than Indiana and Purdue or Indiana and BYU in my opinion. Like they were right there, undefeateds that have like whatever, say what you want about their resume, but they're doing it right. So I enjoyed that. Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets getting a big, just dominating the state of Florida this year. So I think obviously you're going to have Oregon and Ohio State at 1 and 2, right? I think you got to go Indiana BYU at 3 and 4 and keep the undefeateds up there, because Ohio State still has that good win on their resume of Penn State. So I think that you can justify their one loss, and the one loss being to the number 1 team in the country that's just looked dominant week after week. But then I have the Tennessee Volunteers coming in at 5, and this is where I differ from
ahead of Texas,
where the AP poll is. Yeah, I put Tennessee, Penn State, and Texas at 5, 6, 7. Those one-loss teams, and I just still don't understand what the AP came out today too. And I want to say Texas is at 3 now, and is Penn State 4?
Yes, Texas at 3.
And Tennessee.
Well, I know in coaches, Tennessee went up to 4 in the coaches poll.
Okay, AP's got Tennessee at 6, and Alabama's at 9. Tennessee has a win over the number 9 team in the country. Like Texas and Penn State don't have a win over a current ranked team. Like I don't understand why this is not a conversation. Like I have no idea what Penn State and Texas, like what their justification is for being this top. Like they just dominated Florida. Like that's a team that's given some top 10 teams close games, but they also are what they are at this point in the season. They're just like a shell of themselves. And Georgia doesn't look as good as they did a few weeks ago. So it's like that's Texas's loss is to a Georgia team that we feel like is worse. Tennessee's win is over an Alabama team that is starting to look better and better. Ohio State has the win over Penn State. Penn State, whatever I think their Big Ten schedule, they at least have Illinois was ranked at the time, fell out. It feels like Penn State's played a little bit tougher schedule than Texas, but Texas really doesn't have anything on their resume to justify being number 3 right now, especially to have a couple undefeated teams. And then, so that's why I have at 5, 6, 7, Tennessee, Penn State, Texas. And then I think you have the 2-loss SEC teams with Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, 8, 9, 10. I think, Alabama and Ole Miss beat Georgia. It's pretty easy. I think Alabama's resume has what is the difference in Alabama and Ole Miss's resume? I feel like Alabama's the win over LSU. That's probably the difference there. I think that's probably better than Ole Miss's second best win. So, and then I have Miami at 11, and I would have Notre Dame at 12. But obviously that 12 spot would go to Boise State, who I have at Boise State at 15. Just to go all the way, I have SMU 13, A&M 14, Boise State 15, and Army at 16. Like, if Army's undefeated, do they go in ahead of Boise State? Like, how do they not? Like, what is Boise State?
Well, I think they would, because that includes a win over Notre Dame. Army plays Notre Dame in 2 weeks. So,
is that right?
Yeah, so if they beat Notre Dame, then yeah, they're getting that spot.
They're absolutely. Yeah, they have to get it. And what do you do with the Army-Navy game? That you're going to just add an extra game, like a week, give yourself like a week to prepare for the playoff game like the following week?
Yeah, I mean, you're doing that game no matter what. So that's just a wild layer to this. And people just forgot. I just overlooked. Did you see Navy lost to Rice last week? I just completely missed that. Navy's got 2 losses now.
Oh, wow.
Rice fired their coach midseason. But I will say, here's what's going to be interesting about the CFP rankings this week. And we'll get into this week's games, Matt Green. So Georgia was at 3 this week. Miami was at 4. Tennessee was at 7. BYU at 9. Bama at 11. Ole Miss was all the way down at 16. So I don't know what's going to happen here because they're going to have to really. This is going to be some nonsense, I think, here in week 2, because Ole Miss was way too far down at 16. This first iteration here. Alabama blows out LSU, who's at 15, so that's not really a big win in the eyes of how the committee ranked LSU coming into this game. They did what they were supposed to do in Death Valley. Like, we'll get into that.
I don't know though. 42-13 on the road.
But what I'm saying is, like, they weren't high. It wasn't like a huge top 10 victory or anything. Like, the way that I'm doing it based on their logic, because they had LSU at 15, Bama at 11, and then you move it like Tennessee. I'm curious. I think they're going to be. Because I think Penn State showed some stuff, and it would be weird for Tennessee to flop over Penn State, but I think they should. I think Tennessee's been better than Penn State this year and shown more than Penn State, similar to what you've talked about. But I think it's going to go Oregon 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4, Tennessee 5 is probably your top 5. But then I think it's going to get really
moving everyone up.
But then I think it gets
right
weird.
Where they are with Miami and Georgia getting kicked out.
But how high up does Ole Miss launch here with this win over who they had as number 3 a week ago? And how far does Georgia fall? Because that's going to be really interesting to me. Is part of what's going to be complicated here for the committee is the committee is going to get in trouble here with the SEC. Like, that is something I am certain of here in the next couple of weeks, because Tennessee, I just feel like, is going to get screwed here with the head-to-head against Alabama. If they lose to Georgia on Saturday and it's close and they lose, let's say, like 20-17 to Georgia, they're going to, they will come into this game probably in the top 5 in CFP rankings. Georgia, they'll fall to probably, I'm going to guess, somewhere around 10 to 12, somewhere in that range. Then if they lose close, they beat Vanderbilt and then they beat UTEP. I don't know how they fall enough. How are you going to hurt them? Like, how do you push them down from number 5 to out of your rankings and a flip team to Ole Miss, who you had at 16 this week?
So who are you talking about? Tennessee being at 5?
And they're going to have to push them out. Like, the logic of Tennessee slide at Bama leapfrogging Tennessee is an Ole Miss moving up, skyrocketing from 16 into the field too. I just think they're going to come in. We're going to look at the end of the year, the regular season here, and be like, what was the point of these rankings? Because clearly there's no logic, week to week logic here. Because right now, if Tennessee loses close to Georgia, they cannot fall out. Bama's too far behind, and Bama isn't going to get you won the head-to-head. Like, there's just no way around it, but because Alabama blew out LSU on the road at night, they're going to get some credit here, but I think there's a real chance both Tennessee and Bama finish at 10-2, and Bama gets that 4th spot, because I think Ole Miss, as long as they went out, they're in. I think Ole Miss is going to be in here too, but then you're looking at Texas, who I think is going to win out. So you have Texas at 1. Georgia, if they beat Tennessee, they're in. That's 2. And then Ole Miss, I think, like I said, is a lock at 3. You're only getting 4 SEC teams in right now. Unless Notre Dame loses to, like, Army or something, maybe you get 5. If you get 5, then none of this matters. I mean, I know Eli Drinkwitz throwing the Mizzou stuff out there, which is just not the case.
Still in there.
Yeah,
still in there.
I guess technically, but no, you're not. There's no chance. Look at where the committee is. Like, where is Ole Miss or Mizzou in this one? Mizzou was down at 24. You're not moving up. Like, you don't. It's not happening. So I just look at this, and I don't think they're going to be able to logic their way out of pushing Tennessee behind Alabama based on where the rankings are this week and last week, and they're going to do it anyway. Like, if Tennessee wins out or only loses to Georgia and Bama wins out, both finish at 10-2. Don't you feel like Bama's going to get that spot over them for that final 4th SEC spot? Because that's what I think is going to happen, because they just blew out LSU the way they did.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. It's the timing of the loss, I think, is going to hurt Tennessee if that's the case.
Yeah, because that's a great point. If Tennessee beats Alabama this last week of the season, there's no question.
Ole Miss and Alabama with those wins over Georgia head-to-head, and then if Georgia's got the win over Tennessee, then Tennessee's probably the one that's sitting in 4th place among those 4 teams. So, I don't know. I mean, maybe because you probably can't really justify having Georgia jump Ole Miss or Alabama, even if Georgia were to just blow out Tennessee. Like, number 10 blowing out who might be number 4, number 5. that's usually enough to jump you like 5 spots, So I don't know. I don't know what happens, or if it's a close loss for Tennessee, and then having the head-to-head win over Alabama, where Ole Miss would only have played one of those other 3 teams as well. And I guess so it's going to be tricky. The SEC championship is just game is getting even messier. Like with Texas.
The tiebreaker rules are insane. Like they made this so complicated. This is just a mess.
It could be very clean, and Texas could win their last. What do they have? Arkansas, Kentucky, and A&M, and Tennessee could beat Georgia and Vanderbilt, and that's it. And we got 2 one-loss teams in the SEC championship. Right now, we don't really know what to expect of Georgia. So it's hard to think that this team can even to get to the SEC championship. So I don't know. I think there's that dude on Reddit that has went with all the scenarios, some sort of calculator. I'll have to find it again and see after this week's results. Like if we get just kind of chalk the rest of the way, which we never will because it's the SEC, but I'm really curious. I don't know what it's going to be if we can somehow have a 7-way tie. Like I think that is still on the table with with a lot of teams only having 2 conference games left.
Well, and it's because you didn't go to 9 conference games when you brought them in. That was a joke. Like you should have gone to 9. You're not in this spot if you go to 9.
So who are we looking at right now? So Texas. So we have 5 contenders is what we're saying kind of for the playoff right now. A&M kind of being that 6th one on the outside.
A&M would have to upset Texas at the end. They have to win out. And
that's definitely possible because A&M can get to the SEC championship. That's the thing. Like they're in control of their own destiny to get to the SEC championship. So that's kind of the wild card there.
True.
So despite having the extra non-conference loss. But yeah, you look at Texas among the other big 4 we're talking about, they only played Georgia. Ole Miss only played Georgia. Tennessee will have played Georgia and Alabama. Right? And then Alabama will have played Georgia and Tennessee, and Georgia will have played all 4 of the other ones, which is just insane. So, yeah, I don't know what they're going to have to do to sort this all out, but it's going to be crazy.
Tennessee right now, if you're a Tennessee fan, you have to be looking at Ole Miss at Florida, hoping Lagway plays, and that's a possibility there. And then the Egg Bowl weirdness, because I think Ole Miss is the one you have targeted here. Obviously, if you beat Georgia this weekend, you're in no matter what. But that's a see it to believe it, because these games have not been competitive since the first half of 2021. So,
and like, what do you do with the loser of that championship game if you're sitting here with 5 potential playoff teams in this conference?
Yeah.
And someone gets that 3rd loss in the SEC championship. Are they going to be punished for that? Like,
yes.
I don't know. I'd have a hard time. And also,
I think it depends on who it is, right? Like if it's A&M, maybe. If it's Georgia or
A&M
Texas,
is their 4th loss or 3rd loss. Yeah. I don't know. It's I'm gonna have a hard time. I'd have a hard time if I was a team that got punished because we made the SEC championship. Like we did.
Well, maybe it depends on how you lose. Like everything is just going to be like, what does it feel like coming out of it? Did you get blown out? Did you feel like you didn't belong? I don't know.
It might be more justified this year than it's ever been, because I was always annoyed in the BCS era when that team that loses the SEC championship goes to the Capital One Bowl, and then that team that's ranked like number 7 in the SEC that didn't play in the SEC championship goes to the Sugar Bowl while the other team's playing in the national championship. I was always annoyed by that, but it's like that's pretty low stakes. Like the college football playoff, like this is how we're crowning the national champion. Like it might be more justified this year to do it that way because, okay, if Tennessee gets that extra loss in the SEC championship, like, well, they didn't actually play Ole Miss, so I guess we can justify putting Ole Miss in instead of them, and maybe like that's how they'll their mind, the logic will work. I'm not sure, but like in the past, it's like, what do you mean Florida's going? Like we won the SEC East. Like we're the team. Like we won the East, they didn't. We're the one that should be getting whatever postseason accolades there are. So I'm interested to see what they do with that. I hope it is messy, because I think messy means the messier it is probably means Georgia beats Tennessee as a 2-loss team right now. But I have no idea what it's going to end up being. Like it's crazy that we really don't know what the SEC championship game is going to be sitting here going into week 12.
For sure. We'll leave it there, Matt Green. Let's get into our week 11 pick'em recap, sir. How did we do this weekend?
All right, sir. It was a good week in the Thomas household in the pick'em, sir. You made up some ground this week. So overall, you went 10-2 on the week. Big time. Who was the only loss? Yeah, you had Iowa, and then
I was so mad that I didn't do the Friday night. Like UCLA was playing better. That was so dumb.
Weekday road game. I don't know what I was thinking. Went against it as well. What was the other one you missed? Oklahoma. That was the only other game.
And Oklahoma, I was right on the money there until I wasn't. Like an all-time choke job. Like I felt really good about that one, and then just
I picked too soon. You know, I guess that Oklahoma Tennessee game was going to be like the game of the year. It's always some random game. Oklahoma, Missouri, maybe not the game of the year because the first 3 quarters, but that fourth quarter was just one of the greatest college football quarters I've ever watched. What were there, 4 touchdowns in the final 2 minutes of that game, 2 scooping scores, just incredible theater on SEC Network late night. That was good stuff. But so what did I say? You went 10-2 overall. I went 7-5 overall this week. Not my best work. You went 8-4 against the spread. I went 7-5 against the spread. So I'm sitting at 66-1 against the spread on the season. I got a 6-game lead on you there. You're 60-72-1. And then overall, you cut into that lead, sir. I'm now 1 game ahead of you, 88-45 on the year. You're 87-46. So it was a competitive week for sure. Zeus on the week, he went nuts. You know, he had that big what was that back in week 7? Went 5 home dogs. It was a home dog kind of week, and he went 4-1 on those home dogs against the spread. This week went 2-2. Virginia Tech, the Hokies gave the Clemson Tigers all they could handle, but couldn't get the win. LSU, way off on that one. Samsonite. LSU just got manhandled. What does Milroe have? We're gonna get into that game.
We're getting into that game. Yeah, we'll see.
So yeah, Missouri.
I have some Milroe stuff that's pretty wild. The Milroe experience is a wild one.
For sure. Missouri got the win. Utah didn't get the win, but they did cover. So BYU at the end there. So that got Zeus, but he's now 11-8. Zeus is home dog of the week on the season. So that's what it is right now, sir.
There you go. Well, we hit a little bit of Georgia here at the top, so we'll save Georgia for a second. Let's get into the Vols, Matt Green, and what happened here. The Vols beat the other Bulldogs here 33-14. I've never seen this before. Jeff Levy coaches in jeans. Have you seen a coach in jeans?
No, I have not.
Jeff Levy was wearing some denim blue jeans here on the sideline. Never seen that before.
Would you rather have your coach in jeans or a tie?
Probably a tie.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the tie personally. PJ Fleck, he can pull it off. I feel like he's got a certain a certain swagger about him, but I don't know. I'd rather my coach. I like the basketball revolution of coaches, just in athletic polos, or maybe I'm partial to the athletic polo.
I mean, they're doing over polos. Here. They're doing the quarter zip. It's a quarter zip revolution.
Or yeah, just being something kind of comfortable and some sneakers. You're on a basketball court. I don't know why you gotta be in a.
Well, I think that's okay. I mean, I've been someone who's rallied against managers in baseball wearing the uniform. It's ridiculous. It's one of the silliest things I've ever seen. We got
a lot of guys just rock a hoodie and the pants, and then maybe some just some regular shoes. But yeah, Bobby Cox was rocking the spikes for sure. It's you're not coming in the game, Bobby. I don't know why you need the spikes on.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It just, I don't know. It's when I was at the Masters, you see people in the spikes with their shoes, the actual golf shoes. You're not getting out there, my guy.
They might need you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's maybe a hot take of mine, but
Like
yeah,
keeping
no.
a
So
basketball in your car, in case there's like a game picks up, you're ready, you're just ready. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Someone's gonna ask you to tee off on a celebrity shot here at Augusta National. Gotta be ready.
that's true. The one thing I will allow is like if you bring in a glove to a baseball game, that's fine. That's Chase Thomas podcast approved. Like if you catch it fly ball, that's cool. You take it home, like just to make sure you don't have to barehand it and drop it and things like that. Like I get that. I'm okay with the glove. That's the one thing I'm okay with. I'm okay with the glove.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, rain on anyone's parade. I feel like as an adult man, just by yourself or a group of friends and you bring the glove, seems kind of weird. You're there with like a kid and y'all both bring your gloves. Like, yeah, that makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense. But I don't
Well,
know if you're
I
just
think it's
like
probably a little bit
you and
different
your
if it's
buddy are
you're
going
out
to
with the
the
fellas. Like I don't think I'm
you and
bringing the glove if
you
I'm
go
out with
to
the
and you bring
fellas.
your glove.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
probably
don't
not
know about
happening.
that.
Yeah, there's context for all of this. I feel like I'm on a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode right now. Well, Matt Green, all of that to say, Vols beat the Dogs 33-14 here. There's a lot to unpack from this game from my side of things. So Nico Iamaleava had a great first half. He's played 8 consecutive quarters of really good football now, dating back to the second half of the Alabama game to the end of the first half here against Mississippi State. But he exits the game with an upper body injury. He doesn't come back in the second half at all. Dante Thornton left the game late. He had a great game. He had a big 74-yard touchdown reception from Nico in the second quarter of this game. Javonte Spraggins, the right guard, he gets banged up, comes in and out. Andre Carrick, the left guard, he does not play in the second half. Dylan Sampson knocked out of the game for a little bit. He comes back in and has another great second half. But Tennessee's been pretty fortunate through the course of this season in terms of injury luck outside of Keenan Peely. They're starting middle linebacker who was lost a few weeks back in the Florida game. They've been relatively healthy, and you hope you can withstand that for as long as you possibly can in the sport. But the SEC, regardless of who you're playing, it's just physical, and this was another physical game for Tennessee against Mississippi State, and guys were getting banged up, and Tennessee was down a lot of guys, and they were down their number 2 running back, Deshaun Bishop, who got hurt last week, so he doesn't play in this game. But the injury started to add up here a little bit for Tennessee, especially on offense. So it's not really what you want going into Georgia week, but Georgia got banged up with Ole Miss on Saturday, so they're licking their chops as well, playing a physical game in the rain in Oxford. So both teams coming in, that's something I thought about coming into this week in our pick'em for later on. It's just that both the Vols and the Dogs, the Georgia Bulldogs, that is, they're coming in wounded and beat up, and we'll see what the injury report and the availability report looks like in the middle of this week, because I'm very curious to see who's in, who's out, who's questionable, who's not for both sides here. But especially on the
Not a
Tennessee
week
side
I
of
was
things,
crazy about College Game Day coming to town. I was like, oh man, we're not looking our best right now.
I mean, neither is really looking their best. Like, I mean, we'll see. Fingers crossed on Nico that he's able to go and everything's okay there. But that's still a TBD until. I mean, Heupel said he expects him to be able to go on Saturday in the post-game presser, but you didn't see him the whole second half. So you never know. You don't 100% know what's going on there. So fingers crossed that is the case and that he is ready to go from the get-go on Saturday. But Gaston Moore, I think, was fine. But Nico had 2 big explosive plays in this one that I thought was huge through the air. Vols score on the opening drive for the first time in a while, so they were finally able to get over that because they've been able to drive the ball down the field, but it's been fumbles, this, that, and the other. Not been able to do that. The defense, though, to me, Matt Green, is probably it's not even like, I'm not saying it's a panic button, but you've been able to run on Tennessee's defense the last 2 weeks. Kentucky gashed this team last week. Mississippi State ran the ball well. Both their top 2 backs averaged 6.3 yards per carry in this one and really gashed this front 7 a little bit. So that's something to monitor, but I don't know what that means against Georgia because, like you said, Trevor Etienne doesn't play much in this game. Nate Frazier has his fumbling issues. In years past, this would have spelled doom to kind of be struggling to stop the run over the last couple weeks with the date against Georgia, but that's not really how Georgia's played and not really how they're made up this year. So I don't know if it's actually a big cause of concern going into Georgia week that Tennessee's struggling to stop the run because Georgia hasn't really utilized that, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's kind of how people talked about LSU this past week. Like you've been able to Alabama's kind of been able to get run on at times, but LSU's not the team that's been able to utilize to kind of take advantage of that weakness. So yeah, I'm interested to see how Georgia attacks Tennessee next week. That because that's one things I found interesting about this game was what was it 23-14 so it was that late third quarter.
Yeah.
So like Mississippi State was kind of making it close. The fact that they were able to run the ball the way they were, that was probably the most surprising thing to me. But I mean, you had your backup quarterback in there, end up pulling away in the fourth quarter. So it never really got too close. It felt like they were probably on the way to having that kind of, I don't know, like offensive, just like breakthrough game. Like I don't even know how to describe Mississippi State. Like they are that game. They're the get right game, right? Like I think that's when Georgia had one of their better games. Carson Beck threw for 450 yards. So we'll see. It looked like Tennessee was on the way to doing that to Mississippi State, but it's hard to even know what to take away from the Mississippi State game because this team's just been so bad all year. They're just at the bottom of like every statistic in the entire conference.
But not on offense. They've got some juice on offense. I think Van Buren's a good player. I think Van Buren's going to be a good quarterback with Levy and company. He impressed me. The stats won't show it, but Van Buren, I think, was solid as a true freshman in that spot. And I think he's shown flashes this year. I wouldn't be surprised if Van Buren's good for Mississippi State next year or the year after. I think if they give him time, I think he's a good fit for what Levy and that scheme's trying to do. So I would buy some Van Buren stock at Hail State. But the final thing I'll say, and this is kind of like one of those things because I think Tennessee fans have really struggling with this, and I understand because like the offense, like you said, looked like it was finally about to break out in the first half because Nico has the long pass to Thornton, he has the opening bomb 34-yarder to squirrel out of the slot, score in your opening possession. Nico ran the ball well, like it was just all starting to look pretty comfortable and look pretty easy for Tennessee offensively. And then he gets knocked out of the game and he's not in and we don't see him in the second half and just everything's a little bit more discombobulated. Thornton goes down. You're like, oh my God, Sampson goes down. You're just like, man, we could never just have it all coalescing together at the same time this season. And the defense is so good that it just hasn't really mattered for Tennessee all year long. But I think the thing that's just kind of wild that you take for granted when you just win like this, I mean, Heupel's 11-1 in SEC games at home since the start of the 2022 season, Matt Green. Like, it's just, you were wandering the wilderness for over a decade, and it's just kind of, you got to go through some stats where it's like the guy's lost one home game as a whole since the start of the 2022 season. He doesn't get upset ever. Not like emotionally, just like the team does not get upset. Like Tennessee outside of the Arkansas game, those just don't really happen to Tennessee. Like it's just at South Carolina 2 years ago.
Arkansas, South Carolina. There's been.
I'm just saying those don't happen. Like they're not a common occurrence. Like you don't have to be on like upset alert or Tennessee's overlooking so and so. Like he is by and large he's raised the floor so high at Tennessee through his almost 4 complete seasons now, that you just kind of take it for granted where you're like, oh, another perfect home season in SEC play for Tennessee.
I will say everyone's an upset alert these days. Like he's definitely raised,
but not
the
Tennessee
floor.
at home.
Like,
Tennessee at home is just not. They just take care of business.
Florida was at home, right? Like that was
Florida. No, they've never lost to Florida at home.
No, but I'm saying the thing went to overtime. Like
yeah, but I'm saying they won both. He's won both games against Florida at home, and you used to never be able to beat Florida like that. Like he's beaten Alabama his both times at home. Like he's beaten Alabama both times in Neyland Stadium. So I just think that's something that I wanted to shout out Heupel here is that he has protected home field better than any Tennessee coach has since Fulmer. And I think that's just because Neyland Stadium is such a weapon when used correctly, because of how big it is, because of how loud it gets. You should have this kind of success.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Right. I mean, that's honestly the truth when it comes to Neyland Stadium. And because it's Neyland Coliseum. It's not really a stadium. It's a Coliseum. So, yeah, I don't know. Shout out to Heupel for
some say better than the Coliseum in Rome. I've heard some say that.
Many have said that who've done both at the same time.
It's funny, though, how thin the line is, because if they did lose that game to Florida in overtime, this would be like the biggest game of Heupel's career coming up at Georgia. Like, because they kind of were expected to take that next step, and then this might be a 3-loss team now. Like sitting here at 1 loss going into the Georgia game kind of feels like, as a Tennessee fan, like other than the way the SEC's gone, because you don't know if you're getting in, you were kind of, I feel like we were sold this bill of goods as SEC fans. We went 10-2, we're getting in the playoff, damn it. That's what everyone said. But so Tennessee sitting here probably like, hey, 1 loss going into the Georgia game, a game at Georgia that we probably all chalked up as like, this is probably the loss on the schedule, and that would be the 2nd loss. We're in the playoff. Like, and I think they reasonably, especially if Alabama continues to win, they reasonably should think that their 10-2 is strong enough to get in the college football playoff. But if that Florida game goes differently, and it's like, lose to Florida again, now lose to Georgia, I feel like the Heupel like tenure might feel a little shakier.
I don't think it's shaky. It's just more of like, what's going to be annoying is if Tennessee finishes like in the CFP rankings this year 10-2, and they're like the 13th, 14th team and just left out. And then in 2022, if
11 or 12, and then 2 of the automatic qualifiers.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, just out. Like, they're one of the first ones out, right? It's what I'm saying. And it's like, if it was a 14-team playoff this year, you're in. But it's a 12-team. And then in 2022, if it's a 12-team playoff, Tennessee's in at 10-2. You would have made the playoff 2 years ago. So it's just like, that would be very frustrating. It's like, they're with just the playoff model that it is, and just kind of the way things have shaken out, that I don't know, you've had these 2 really, really good seasons here in your first 4, and you might have 0 playoff games to show for it, depending on how things break here down the stretch. But I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, because there's still a lot of football to be played. There's still a lot of opportunity ahead of him. And like I said, if Tennessee beats Georgia this weekend, they're in. That's all that matters. But they don't, they're going to need some help, I think, based on how things have unfolded here over the last couple weeks. Well, let's pivot here to the Dogs, Matt Green. They go down at Ole Miss here. I want to first ask you, though, what was the biggest reason, now that you've had 24 hours to think about it, the biggest reason Georgia lost this game?
I think you have to put this on the offensive line more than anything. I mean, other than if you're trying to blame Georgia, because I put it more than anything, I put it on Ole Miss's defensive line for just dominating this game. Like, I don't know if you saw the one GIF from this game. I say GIF. I don't know if you say GIF. I say GIF.
I say GIF.
And we saw it live. We were like, that looked synchronized. It was like 4 D linemen, like swam move. I don't know. Past tense of swim move, all at the exact same time on the lineman. It was like one of those NBA videos where you see where everything's like coordinated at the same time. Just like 4 dudes just get thrown to the side all at the same time. Cash Jones is about to get the ball, and it's just like 4 Ole Miss guys come at him 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage. It was honestly, I haven't seen a Georgia game, because that's why I was trying to rack my brain. Like on the show I was doing earlier, like I don't remember, not even an Alabama game, did Georgia ever get whipped like this. Like a lot of the Alabama games, Georgia's kind of been in control and then loses it in the 4th quarter or something. That was kind of the first 3 or 4 matchups, how they all went. But you've seen, like, even they've won a couple by 17. But yeah, it's just, it felt like after that first possession, it felt like this is going to be the Texas game all over again. We're just about to just dominate this offensive line and just like wreak havoc. Like, this is who we really are. But now you're looking at Georgia. That Texas game is like, who was that team? It honestly makes me feel like Texas is worse each week. And I'm like, we dominated Texas, and we haven't dominated anybody. We didn't dominate Florida. We didn't dominate Kentucky. Like, so I think that's probably the worst thing on Texas' resume right now, is that Georgia is judged by a different lens. You know, if they're being judged by national championship caliber, but they're still a top 10 team most likely. But they just, you know, we've seen these. Yeah, that's all I can really say. It's just we've seen this team just look underwhelming several times this year.
Well, and that's what I think is so interesting, because my reaction to that and seeing what Ole Miss did, like, here's one of the things that I think Tennessee fans are looking at is like, oh, look at what this Ole Miss defensive line did against this Georgia front. Imagine what we can do. Here's what I'll say about that is I think Ole Miss has more they're not as deep as Tennessee on the defensive line. Tennessee can go 10 to 12 deep when they're all healthy. Ole Miss has more top tier NFL, like just guys like Princely and Walter Nolan and dude, like those are first round caliber guys. Like those dudes were wrecking havoc in different ways. They didn't have a lot of guys behind them. Because they were just rushing 4. Like Ole Miss was getting home rushing 4 and being able to sit back in coverage. Tennessee like has Pierce. Joshua Josephs is a really good player too, but the way Tennessee breaks you down is in waves. They just rotate like a hockey unit on the defensive line, and they just wear you out. So in the second half, you're just like, oh my God, is this James Pierce now with only 30 snaps coming after me? Is this what's happening? So the right and left tackles are looking around like, are they really like, who is this? Caleb Herring, another 4-star coming off the edge? All right, great. How many snaps is he going to have? 9? Awesome. Great. Going to enjoy this. Another fresh blue chipper coming around the corner. But they don't come in waves like that. They haven't really overwhelmed teams in the way that Ole Miss overwhelmed Georgia. It's just a complete unit. Like Tennessee's defensive line is complete and deep. Ole Miss just has this high ceiling that I think is still higher than Tennessee's, but I think I would still take Tennessee's on any given week. But I'm very curious how this works because James Pierce doesn't have the sack numbers, but he wreaked havoc and he's playing his best ball in SEC play. I'm curious what that looks like with Josephs and company. Like the tackle situation seems the most dire to me for Georgia, and I wonder what that means for Carson Beck because I mean this will be a different element that we haven't seen in the Georgia-Tennessee games to this point of just like Georgia, they are loaded blue chipper wise on the offensive line. It's not like they haven't recruited well there, but it seems like they are the most vulnerable they've ever been against probably the best overall defensive line they played. So I don't know what you're thinking about that and how your views have changed Georgia's ceiling if this is the offensive line you're dealing with the rest of the way.
Yeah, and that was the one thing I talked about with Ole Miss that, like, I guess the one kind of credit I gave them in terms of their just non-conference versus conference production, they were just kind of night and day, and I didn't really know, is this team legit or are they just dominating the bad teams on their schedule? The one thing that was not an outlier in terms of the conference versus non-conference production was the sack numbers, and they've just been getting tackles for loss and getting after the quarterback basically every single game but LSU. I think LSU, they held them without a sack. And that's where Georgia's been this year in terms of like the offensive line has not been dominant in the run game, but they have been good at protecting Carson Beck. And in this game, I think they only had 10 sacks allowed coming into this game. So Ratledge hardly played at all in this game after coming back and playing a good bit versus Florida. So you had Bobo in at right guard at times. Michael Morris didn't play at all in this one, and you still were playing 3 guys at the tackle spots. But Ernest Green, this guy started the entire season as a redshirt freshman a year ago on an offense that was really good, averaging 40 points a game. And that dude just got worked on Saturday night. Like if your left tackle is getting beat that bad, and there was a time, I remember one of the sacks where Delp was also on that side and they still gave up a sack. So I think the offensive line, like I just don't know what you do when a team is just dominating your offensive line. Like you can talk about, oh, Bobo should do this, Bobo should do that. Like, you know what Bobo gets the most hate about is the screen game. For whatever reason, oh, Georgia loves to call so many screens. Like, yeah, if you watch college football, everyone is calling screens like all the time and getting the ball to their players in space. Like, it works a lot. And when you aren't able to protect your quarterback, you're going to have to throw probably even more screens because you can't drop back and throw deep if you have 2 seconds to throw the ball. Like, you didn't even really see Beck take many shots deep because he never had time. Like, Beck was still 20 of 31 in this game. The one pick is a deflection at the end. Like Beck didn't play well by any means, 186 yards, but I felt like he was far from the problem in Georgia's offense and Georgia's just team in general. Like it's kind of weird too when you look at the stats. Well, you have other questions, right? I'll throw all of my stuff out right at once.
Well, I think the other part of it is from the outside to me, like I just felt like the training wheels were on Carson Beck this whole game, where Carson Beck was not asked to like go win this game for Georgia. It was one of those where Georgia kept getting decimated and Georgia could not protect Carson Beck, and Georgia realized that with the drops and everything else. Humphreys had a bad drop in this one. There were a bunch of different guys who had drops where it's just like, you mentioned the stat of the Georgia leading the country now, or tied in drops. Like, I just felt like this was a recipe for disaster, and I just don't know how much of this gets cleaned up in a week. Is like Carson Beck, and do you think that was just because of Ole Miss and what they were presenting, or do you think this is the new way Bobo and Kirby are going to handle Carson Beck with the interception issues? Is that like, you're going to have to go a little bit more conservative, but also you don't have the dudes out wide to just open it up and let it rip? Because I think that was like something I saw from Georgia fans and folks nationally, was just they were trying to figure out the chicken or the egg situation of, are they intentionally leaving the training wheels on Carson in this game because of what he's done in the past with the interceptions the last few weeks? Or is it because the receivers and the offensive line and just the way that game was going, they were not going to take a lot of those chances and just going to let it rip because Georgia was just kind of, it didn't feel like Georgia was going to be able to get back in that game no matter what.
I mean, I didn't necessarily see it that way. I felt like coming out, like that first possession, Georgia did run the ball a lot. It was raining. I mean, Ole Miss didn't seem to have a problem throwing the ball, but I don't know if I would say that. I would say it's probably just, I mean, yeah, he's been turning the ball over a bunch, so you have to be worried about that a little bit, but also just, I mean, I think that was what they did well against Texas, probably better than most games this season, was able to establish something on the run. And Ole Miss in conference play has not been dominant against the run. I think Oklahoma rushed for like 130, 140 yards. LSU ran the ball a little bit. Like I think it was Kentucky ran the ball well on them. Like, there's been games this year where Ole Miss has been outgained on the ground. And so I think that's probably Georgia thinking, like, if we're going to go in and get this win on the road, like, we have to be able to establish something on the ground. And they just never really were able to. Like, Nate Frazier had a couple nice runs, but obviously the fumble was huge. But yeah, I mean, it's easy to point at the quarterback and say, yeah, we should be throwing deep. But if he doesn't have time, like, I don't know what else you want to do. I don't know what else you can really do. Like, it was definitely frustrating when you're getting pressure on the quarterback all the time, and then when he does deliver a good throw, it's getting dropped. It's not help. And I'm not going to act like Carson Beck didn't have his faults or anything. Maybe he's holding on to the ball too much. Maybe there's no one open downfield, but it just felt like he was under constant pressure all night.
Final thing here, Matt Green. Was this a bigger surprise than the Bama loss, or which one do you think, after it was all said and done, which result and the way the game went was more surprising, Bama or Ole Miss here?
I would say this has to be more surprising, simply because Georgia got dominated the way they did. What was it, like 250 to like 45 total yards at halftime or something in this game? Like, they controlled the ball like the whole first half. Outside of that first defensive stop and the touchdown, like, Georgia just hardly did anything. It was almost the equivalent of like the defensive equivalent of like the Tennessee Georgia game last year. Like, y'all were able to get hype that first play of the game and go nuts. It's like you get the sack on second down, get the pick on third down, even have the gutsy like fourth and goal, we're going for it, and you pick it up on the ground. It's like, it felt like we're establishing like we're the more physical team, and then it's like, okay, backup, the quarterback Jackson Dart goes to the locker room too, and it's like the backup quarterback, you wouldn't have even known the backup quarterback was in. That offense just went down the field like 8 plays, scored a touchdown. It was definitely the more surprising result. Like, Alabama, I wasn't expecting to be in a 28-0 hole, but like, I guess that was a super surprising result with how it happened too. Just one of the most insane games, roller coaster rides as a fan I've ever been on at that Alabama game. But yeah, I mean, just the way Ole Miss just dominated this game physically for 4 quarters. I mean, that was definitely more surprising. The one silver lining, I think, with the Georgia defense, because I think you felt just vibes watching the game. Like, Ole Miss is dominating and doing whatever they want offensively. But then you look at the box score, and it's not as like lopsided as you would kind of think. Like, I mean, 397 total yards. Like, Jackson Dart threw for less than 200 yards. They have forced them to 5 field goals. So like, Georgia's defense was like, kind of bending but don't break. Like, I mean, they don't force those field goals. Like, this thing that's probably why it felt close, or looked closer than it really felt, because some of those field goal drives are touchdowns, and this is a different ball game. But yeah, it was just a domination by the Ole Miss Rebels for the better part of 4 quarters.
Another blowout and domination here over the weekend, Matt Green. Bama blows out LSU. What did you think of this?
I was pretty surprised by this result, other than the fact that LSU has had their issues with running quarterbacks, and specifically Jalen Milroe. I assumed they were going to make some adjustments. Surely the guy's not going to run for 150 yards and 4 touchdowns again. And he said, no, I'm not. I'm going to run for, what he run, 180, 190 and 4 touchdowns. It was just an absurd.
I don't have it in front of me, but can I add to that?
I will say, next to Michael Vick and Lamar Jackson, he feels more explosive than Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has that little side to side wiggle, and he's just like he's different like that. I think Michael Vick is the only quarterback I've ever seen just be more explosive. Like, this guy is insane the way he just ran away from the defense multiple times.
I think that's fair. But I also think, so this is what makes the Milroe experience so weird. So Milroe had 4 rushing touchdowns in this game. Against UGA and LSU, he has 8 TDs, 6 of those on the ground in those 2 victories, key victories, biggest victories of the season for Alabama. Milroe, he ran for 307 yards in those 2 games. Elite, like you said, Michael Vick type numbers at Virginia Tech for him. However, he ran for 21 yards in the 2 losses at Vanderbilt and at Tennessee. When he doesn't run at all, like, there's no middle ground here with Jalen Milroe. Either opposing teams shut him down and Bama has no answers, and they lose both those games, or he runs wild in these big games against LSU and Georgia. I mean, the disparity when I was going through these numbers and just looking at this is just kind of wild to me. It's just, I couldn't believe that LSU got gashed again. I saw they've been outscored like 73-19 over its last 6 quarters from And the Valley Shook, a good LSU blog over there on SB Nation. I thought that was pretty wild. Alabama was 10 of 13 on 3rd down in this game. I just, like, Brian Kelly, this is his first loss at night at LSU. I don't know. I feel like this is a pretty demoralizing loss if you're an LSU fan, because now you're out of the CFP again here, and now you just wrapped up year 3 of Brian Kelly here in LSU, and not a whole, like, he's won. It's been very normal. You're a solid program. You just had the Heisman winner last year. You've had some really great offenses, but I never thought that defense would be the reason Brian Kelly's LSU teams can't get over the hump, because that's really been what it is their defenses are just imploding in these big games. And yeah, I mean, if you remember, the last loss like this for LSU was Tennessee in 2022, where they bombed away in Baton Rouge, and the fans were gone by the 3rd and 4th quarter because Tennessee was overwhelming and just destroying that LSU defense. It's just weird. Like, the Brian Kelly era to this point in Baton Rouge has just been weird.
Yeah, I mean, you just think of LSU's history of just athletic defensive linemen and linebackers. Like, they're not the kind of team that just gets torched defensively. Yeah. And obviously defensive backs, like, they're like DBU. But you just haven't seen that from this team this year. And, you know, when you have this super conference, like, someone's got to lose these games, you know? Someone's got to lose 3 or 4 games in this conference that thinks they can win a national title. And that's how it's going to go. That's an interesting observation about Milroe. I'm looking at his game log right now. And you look at South Carolina too, 18 for 36. It's like, that's another one of those games. He'd have 2 touchdowns in that one, but that's another one of those games that, you know, came down to the wire. They could have lost. So Tennessee, 239 yards he had against Tennessee. That's his 3rd most passing yards of the entire season. 310 versus Vanderbilt, 374 against Georgia. Like, I get him going for 117 and 2 touchdowns on the ground. 27 of 33 for 374. I still don't understand that.
Well, it's just, Bama's another one of those teams where you could tell me they won it all this year. They lost in the first round and got sandwiched by, I don't know, insert team here. Like, the highs and lows of the Milroe era at Alabama is just going to make it very, very fun to watch down the stretch here, and then maybe come playoff time if they do make it in. But Yeah, I don't know what to do here if you're an LSU fan. I think you continue to write it out. Going into next year. I think next year though is a big year for Brian Kelly. But I mean, you got the number one overall player coming in, Bryce Underwood, quarterback. So we'll see if he plays right away. I don't know. Like he's still recruiting really well.
Is he going to LSU? I think there's some flip potential with Bryce Underwood. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. I'll believe when I see it. He's been committed to LSU for a long time.
I feel like Stewie Griffin over there. I was getting a little high pitched. That novel we've been working on. All right, go ahead.
South Carolina. You mentioned them. They dominate Vanderbilt. Matt Green. We've talked about it. The best 6-3 team in college football.
Finally getting in the top 25. I'm not sure what took so long.
I mean, goodness gracious. But maybe they don't want to be in because they keep beating teams when they're not in the top 25. You don't want to be in there if you're the Gamecocks. What did you make of this one over the Commodores here, who are suddenly reeling?
Yeah, like you said, South Carolina's legit, best 6-3 team in college football. We talked about it a week ago. The magic was dead with Vanderbilt. The magic died in the Texas game. That's when they came back to reality. But Auburn was just bad enough to still lose to regular Vanderbilt without the magic. South Carolina.
Wait, can I do a sidebar real quick, like really quickly on this? You just maybe before I forget this. If they beat LSU because LSU just lost to Bama, they're another 2-loss team where I think their case for a college football playoff berth would be really interesting.
And they should have.
That's what I'm saying. They should have. And then you're right there. I mean, but you think about it, they're right there too. And then what do? That's another team that just like, where do they fit in the conversation? Sorry, but continue. That just crazy.
No, I'm with you there, man. They look. We were saying last week, like they look every bit as good as Georgia and Tennessee. Like these days, honestly, they have explosive plays on offense. This defensive line, makes plays in the backfield. Like South Carolina looks really good. I was not expecting what we got out of Lenore Sellers the first few weeks this season. I was not expecting this guy to look like. I mean, I don't have a power rankings of the SEC quarterbacks. Maybe that's a good segment for us to do at some point. But he's got to be up there. Like, I feel like he's a top 5 quarterback in this conference this year. Like, this dude he makes these Houdini type plays, escaping sacks, and he's throwing a lot better than I expected. This dude's been a baller.
No, I think he has. And Lenore Sellers, I talked about it. He reminds me of Dobbs. He does a lot of Dobbs stuff from his Tennessee days. And I mean that in the best way possible because I'm a big Josh Dobbs guy here. And I think Lenore Sellers has some of that. So I linked in our chat here. So the score is 7-0 South Carolina. He almost gets sacked on this play, and it's 1st and 20. He rolls out, throws it across his body for a 50-yard bomb to a South Carolina receiver. It was a bonkers play. You just look at it and you're like, I think Sellers is different, man. Sellers has got some juice, and I think he's going to be a really good player for South Carolina the next couple of years. They've got a dude now. And Sellers is going to be a problem.
It was similar to that play. Was it Alabama that he made? It was like right at the same spot, like near the goal line, got out of a sack. And then I think the dude dropped it. It was like a 50-yard dime and the receiver dropped it. It would have been like one of the plays of the year.
He's hard to bring down, man. Lenore Sellers, he's a good player and he's a gamer. Caleb Alexander of Gamecock Scoop said, quote, "The win makes the Gamecocks bowl eligible and gives the Gamecocks a chance to finish above 500 in conference for the first time since 2017 if they beat Mizzou at home next week," Matt Green. And then McGranahan of the Big Spur, he wrote, quote, "The Gamecocks racked up 962 yards of total offense with an average of 7.28 yards per play in wins over the Aggies and Commodores. A 481-yard average would be first among SEC teams in league games by nearly 30 yards. I mean, this offense is rolling. Like South Carolina, Rocket Sanders is healthy. I mean, it's kind of frustrating if you're a Gamecocks fan because you're like, man, that third loss is just... This could be really, really a special season for us if with that defensive line and with where this offense is. But South Carolina's legit, man. This is a good team.
Yeah, for sure.
Final big one here, Matt Green. The controversy of the weekend, BYU stuns Utah late in the Holy War. Love this, though. They both wore the home. Like the all blue and all red matchup. Great visual. Good stuff. from this rivalry game. Your reaction, though. Did Utah get hosed on that holding call to keep BYU's final drive alive that ended up pushing BYU down the field and tying this game?
I'll be honest, I didn't see it, sir. I fell asleep during this one. I woke up. I was hanging in there, and then I woke up with the kick is good, and I was like, no way, Utah, one of my home dogs of the week, and they lost. So I saw the president make the AD just straight up say they got hosed, but you give me your
$40,000 fine.
40,000?
Yeah.
Wow. Was it AD or president?
AD.
So what happened here?
So
explain it to me.
The play or what the AD did in the presser?
What was the situation?
For which one?
The hold.
Oh, so it was a corner. So Jake Retzlaff on 4th and 20, rolling out, and he gets sacked on the play. Turnaround down should have been it. Utah is going to win the game. But on the left-hand side, the receiver was maybe 5 yards down the field, and there was some jockeying position, just common like receiver, cornerback, just hands up and all that kind of stuff, and just doing like from the outside, like it was a ticky-tack thing that you just on 4th and 20 where he's not getting the ball over in that direction anyway. I mean, it was a pretty egregious call, and I think it's one that should not have been called that affected the game. But I also think, look, I think that was a bad call, but I'm also a big believer in don't put yourself in a position where bad calls affect the outcome of your game. Like, don't allow yourself to fall victim to some questionable officiating. I mean, Utah's now lost 5 straight. They did not score a point in the second half of this game. So it's just like there are certain elements to me where I'm like, you wouldn't have been in this position if you just kick 1 extra field goal or you score 1 touchdown in the second half. You do anything. I don't know. I think to me, they've got bigger issues than just this hold. I mean, like I said, lost 5 straight. Like, they're reeling, and that offense is really, really struggling. I don't know. I mean, it stinks. That would have been a big turning point win. It's been a rough year for the Utes. It was at home. It's a tough call to make. But man, I've never seen an AD respond that way after the game, though. That was pretty wild.
No, you don't see that very often. I've kind of felt some kind of way about these about defensive holding for a while. It almost feels like it just feels like this flag you can just kind of throw in there every once in a while to negate a good defensive play. I don't know. It's like, especially when it's on the other side of the field, like away from the play, like, yeah, maybe that's not away from the play if he doesn't hold. Like, maybe this guy does get open if he's not getting held. So maybe the play happens differently. So you can obviously justify it, but I don't know. There seems to be, even Georgia got one of these, although that was a face mask, right? It was like would have been like a 4th and 20 stop or something, and then the Ole Miss got the face mask that gave Georgia a first down. That was justified though, but it was I hate these plays. The plays that are away from the ball when the refs throw the flag. It's like, I don't know. It's 4th and 20. It's questionable.
Also, his full quote after the game, if you don't remember it, quote, "This game was absolutely stolen from us," Harlan said. This is from the AP. "We were excited about being in the Big 12, but tonight I am not. We won this game. Someone else stole it from us. Very disappointed. I will talk to the commissioner. This was not fair to our team. I'm disgusted by the professionalism of the officiating crew tonight." Like, woof. I've never heard, like, flamethrower.
I mean, it's in terms of, like, protecting your assets, like right now, is there any foul play potentially here? Like, BYU is one of the Big 12 representatives at this point, 11 weeks into the season. I don't know.
I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories. I just think when you look around I just don't think so. I just think that officiating's bad. Like, I just think officiating, like you talked about with the SEC and the Big 12, I just think officiating's bad across the sport right now. Like, I think that's part of what's happening. So that's why it's even more important not to put yourself in a position where officiating can determine whether or not you win a football game.
Yeah, for sure.
Oof. But you know what? BYU Colorado might be gearing up for that in the Big 12 title game. That's going to be fun, man. Elimination game.
Colorado has a legit shot at the CFP now. They are in
Oh, yeah.
control of their own destiny to get to the CFP. They're sitting here with one loss. Big 12, I don't know what the hell they're going to do. They might have a 6-way tie for second place with 2 lost teams. But the rest of the way, this is who Colorado has the rest of the way. They have the preseason first, fourth, and third teams on their schedule in the final 3 games. In the preseason media predictions, the teams are projected to finish first, fourth, and third. Right now, those are the 15th, 12th, and 16th best teams in the Big 12. Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. So I feel like Colorado, America wants Colorado in the college football playoff. Let's just be honest. Like, America is rooting. BYU, Colorado, if we get that, where's the Big 12 championship? Is that usually is it in Jerry World?
No, I don't think so.
Or it's been in Kansas City before, I think, but that's a while back. I think it's been in Jerry World.
AT&T Stadium. Is that Jerry World?
Okay. Yeah, that's Jerry World.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wish they could play a neutral site, Colorado, Utah, go play over in Salt Lake City or something, play in Denver. But what can you do? I'm here for it. Colorado's a lot of fun to watch, man, and I feel like they could get somebody if they get in that college football playoff.
I think they have a much better opportunity than BYU for sure of getting somebody.
So undefeated 12-0 BYU, 10-2 Colorado. Colorado wins.
Oh, BYU's not getting in. No.
BYU's not getting in?
No.
So BYU would be punished for losing the conference title
in
the conference title game, but an SEC team potentially would not. Is that what you're telling me?
That is what I'm telling
you. Wow. The drama.
That's what I'm telling you, man. That's what it feels like. Final thing here, and we'll get out of here. I feel vindicated on that. You didn't mention the Iowa State thing. I feel vindicated. They're never going 12-0. They're never going 11-1. They're never going 10-2. Go through the Iowa State football history. It's just never going to happen. I like the program. It was never going to. There's just something about it. There's a ceiling for this Iowa State team. And if you're Matt Campbell, man, you got it. This is the year. You've waited too long. You're a good coach. Matt Campbell is one of the best coaches in college football. You've done a really good job. You got to get out of here, man. You got to, maybe Michigan opens up. Probably not, but that'd be the one. I don't know what Big Ten job opens up. I don't know where you got to go, but you got to move up. You got to move up and move on. And I don't know, maybe that even means taking a coordinator job at a Power 2 school, doing a Chip Kelly. Do a Chip Kelly somewhere. I don't know what where that might be, but man, it's just Iowa State loses to Kansas here, and Kansas having a rough year. That one, and then of course Miami. You knew Miami was going to get got again.
Yeah, for sure. It was only a matter of time. Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets getting it done on the
back to back for the Jackets against
the plains, on the flats.
Miami. Back to back, and also, why aren't they ever wearing their normal uniforms? I haven't seen the regular gold helmets all year long. You have the white face mask and the white GT logo. I'm like, what are you doing? Georgia Tech's uniforms, I used to hate the honeycomb stuff they were doing. It didn't make any sense anyway with the Yellow Jackets back in the day. But what are we doing? The uniforms are Georgia Tech is just, they're driving me nuts with the uniforms. Great win for them. Haynes King back. He's a gamer. Brent Key.
They're like Kentucky. They have some good uniforms. They just don't wear them. They want to wear all these crazy chrome helmets and this wild
stuff. Very
annoying.
Yeah, the white helmets are terrible.
You couldn't even see the logo on the helmet. I was thinking the same thing. But yeah, it was a huge win. It was a huge win for Georgia Tech for sure. It was they needed that for sure. Are they bowling now? Is that their 6th win?
That's a good question. They were on a bad streak. I feel like they're 5-4. Am I wrong?
Let me see here. I got the standings pulled up here. Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets 6-4. They're bowling now. 4-3 in the conference.
And they got NC State at home. Should win that one. 7-4, and then at Georgia.
So they must have a bye week coming up here. If they already have 10 games.
Yeah, they're a bye this week.
They get the bye before Georgia. Oh, bye this week. Okay.
All right, Matt Green. Well, that's all I've got, sir. Anything you want to throw out there before we wrap up here tonight?
That's all I got, sir. It was we got to bounce back. Tennessee, Georgia. It's gonna be absolutely massive ball game next week. Shoot. Who knows if they're going to do a blackout? I don't know. I told you when that was thrown out there, I was already irritated because Ole Miss was such a big game. Feels like we're looking ahead as fan base. It was bad omen, and I didn't like it one bit. I want you to hear game days coming to town. If you're like, hey, let's rock the black jerseys. I don't know. Right now, it doesn't feel like the right vibe to rock the black jerseys unless you're like, oh, we need something. We need some special energy. The black jerseys. I don't know. But yeah, Tennessee, Georgia, it's gonna be a good one, man. The other show I'm doing, The Voice of College Football, Georgia at the Voice of College Football, Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. live, coming at you live, folks. So check it out. But yeah, man, I'm excited. Tennessee, Georgia week, always big on our show.
I love it. Matt Green, always a pleasure, and I'll talk to you in a couple days.
Yes, sir.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.